Jon Rahm is one of the most talked about players on the planet at the minute, and he's got one of the most unique swings by far. It's very much his own swing, almost a little bit of a throwback to the olden days where everybody swung their own way, and it's something that he's worked a lot around some of the issues he had as a kid, specifically around his right foot, and he's worked with the guys at TPI to really help that. So Jon was born with a right club foot, so his foot was sort of turned inwards. He had to break it, cast it, so he got very limited what we call dorsiflexion. So Jon's really limited in his ability to keep that foot on that angle. What he'll want to do is, as he rotates, is almost straighten that leg and decrease that angle between his foot and his shin. So that's primarily why you see that sort of funky short swing that is so unique to Jon. Now, if you would have tried to lengthen that swing out, the probability is that Jon would, I mean, you can see as I talked about how that angle has to increase in his right foot. Watch what happens. Look, just increases. You probably find is if you lengthened his swing up to sort of normal hand path length up here, you probably find he'd lose a lot of flexion or dorsiflexion through that trail ankle, and probably stand up, may see some distribution issues with his weight. So it's something that his coach Dave Phillips worked with him on to work around that, and that's why you see such uniqueness in his swing. But that's the sort of uniqueness. Let's have a look why it actually works and some other little idiosyncrasies that you might not be able to see or you've not seen before, especially when we look on the face on. So we'll concentrate on that. What I want to look at is firstly his lead foot, and we look at his center of his pelvis. So let's focus primarily lead foot. So what you'll see is it's a little trigger move. His hands will move forward, and then this lead foot, watch this toe. Watch the lead. Look, can you see that? So look, the hands move forward. That lead foot lifts up, and then the center of his mass, look at where that arrow is now. Watch what happens. You see how it's sort of a really complicated move. So he lifts lead foot, lead toe. He moves his center of mass to the right and then move his hands forward. So can you see that? Look, lifts the toe. Well, first trigger, hands forward, lifts the toe and then moves back. Really unique move. You don't see that, and it's something that you won't see a lot on the sort of TV because we don't see a lot of face-on views. But what's actually happening here is I think he does this one because his trail ankle's very limited in that dorsiflexion. By getting up onto this toe, so lifting that toe up and shifting his weight, he's going to shift the pressure into that trail heel. Now that's something that's going to be very difficult for him to do and maintain that pressure into the heel just with his limited ankle mobility. So I think that just little move there of lifting that toe up forces his weight more into the heels. That shift back, which we'll normally see with a lot of good players, is we'll see that initial part of takeaway, we'll see the center of the pelvis shifting a couple of centimeters, and then it moves and recenters. If we watch up to the top of the swing, that pelvis will then sort of recenter, and that's sort of what we see really commonly with good players. But that's you won't see, like I say, you won't see that a lot on TV because one, you don't see slow motion footage, and two, you just don't see from face on. Really unique little aspect. So if we take him back to here, lovely wide takeaway. Look at that width. Look how straight his arms are. Very sort of Butch Harmon-esque, you know, really teaches that wide takeaway. Let's look from down the line. So look at that width. Now, Jon has something unusual that he does where his hands work a little bit more out and his hands roll a little inside. It's more of a sort of what you'd see with high handicappers, if I'm honest with you, that takeaway where the hands work out and then the shaft just rolls a little bit behind him. Now, a lot of people, a lot of coaches would try and get the hands more in and the club more out, but that had just ruined Jon because what he does there is he rolls and then creates a lot of flexion in that wrist, if you can see there, or that bowed position, more commonly referred to in that wrist, sorry. Something that you see with guys like Dustin, David Duval in the early 2000s, but a lot of that comes from that takeaway of that club shaft moving behind him and then creating that bowing from that takeaway. Then he gets the shaft really flat. You know, it's not a position that you teach a lot of the time, but that's because of how he transitioned in downswing. It's a matchup which we'll see. A lot of guys, a lot of your average handicap golfers, if they had this takeaway, they'd just come way over the top with an open face. So very unique position. We'll see from face on. Not a lot of wrist set. Very wide. You know, some guys you'll see a little bit more up there. But what we'll see from here, we look down the line as well. Say, look how flat that shaft is. Look at that. You can see the Callaway logo. On most guys' swings, you wouldn't see the glove emblem at all, but you can see it there just because his wrists are so much in that bow position. Let's get rid of those lines, tidy it up a little bit, and then we'll take him to the top. As you can see, that pelvis will start to recenter really early. You'll see this with a lot of good players as they really recenter that pelvis nice and early, which creates a lot of power. Now what Jon will do, which this is why he can hit it so far from such a short position, is you'll start to see, one, he starts that transition that we've talked about. The weight will move into his lead toe. We just watch that. Weight moves into the lead toe. He actually lifts up his foot a little bit, which is going to help him get a little bit of a longer swing. Lifts up his left heel in the backswing. But then what he's going to do is he's going to really plant into that lead foot, really planting down. That creates a lot of pressure into the ground. But what Jon does is it's this tremendous amount of torque that's happening at the wrist. So obviously a lot of people have heard of lag, which we'll see now. Jon gets a ton of lag. You can see that shaft angle increasing. So he's getting loads of stretch shortening cycle in the wrist. You see that? Boom. Boom. So that's creating lots of torque. And you'll see as well that not a lot of people will talk about, but it's actually creating a lot of torque about the shaft. So a lot of twisting through the handle. You can see it a little bit. If I just try and move this camera slightly, watch this shaft at the top of his swing. So watch how that shaft starts to twist. Can you see that? You'll see it more up top because he's creating a lot of lag and a lot of sort of torque about the handle. See that? Look at the load and the lag on that shaft. Look at it bend here. So he's doing that one by transitioning down into that lead foot, creating a lot of stretch through his lead shoulder, through the rib cage and thorax as it's moving down, creating that pressure, as Pete Cowan would call it. And then he's also creating a lot of lag, a lot of torque through the hands. That's the major reason why you can have such a short swing. Look at that club head. It's still, the club head is still moving back as he starts the downswing. I'll get rid of all these lines so you can see it a little bit more clearly. Watch this club. Watch the club head move towards the target as he's moving down. So he's starting his downswing. See, look, body's moving left, club head is still going into the backswing. Tremendous move to create power and speed. And then let's stop it, lead arm parallel. So you'll see, look at that torque, that twist on the shaft. You'll see his body moving down, gets there. Now, you wouldn't know if you had just shown you a still of that golf swing, you wouldn't really know that he's got a really short swing. Everything from now is pretty sort of traditional, what you'd see with a lot of tour guys. There's a couple of unique things that we'll talk about, but he gets down, look at that lag. He'll start to move that pelvis up, which will create a lot of speed. Again, can you see that pelvis starts to move up? He's holding that leg. You'll see when the hands sort of get to, it's good sort of checkpoint. When the hands get to waist high, you can see he's still got a lot of bend in that right arm, and that club head is above the shoulder. So it's a really good checkpoint when those hands get sort of waist high. Is the club head still above your shoulder? You'll see a lot of guys, a lot of higher handicaps, that club head over here. So it's a nice little visual to sort of check when the hands get to waist high. Is the club above your shoulder? Jon does a fantastic job here. Great way of generating speed. Again, you'll start to see that lead hip elevating. And look as well, look how low these hands are to the ground. So if let me bring it back, so we'll mark up the hands here, and then if we look at the takeaway, pretty much on the same spot as when we took the club away. So look, boom, nice and low. You'll see a lot of guys, a lot of amateurs, those hands here will be a lot higher, more up here, and that just means that they're not creating that downward pressure that they can then fire up and create a lot of speed. So that's something you can really take from Jon's swing, how much he lowered down and how much he retains the angle. And then this is where it gets a little bit more unique for Jon. He creates a lot of angle late in the swing. If you see from face, sorry, down the line, he's still creating that angle. He can't quite see the club face, but a lot of angle. Bring it down a little bit further. Still, most guys now are starting to release that. Jon just keeps it down. Look, he's still not released it. Look, his hands now are already at the ball, and the club head's a good 2-3 foot behind it. That's his sort of more unusual move. There's a lot of de-loft in there, and then when we get to bring it down to impact, so look how far ahead. Look at that. Look at that angle in the shaft. That's just like, you can't teach that. Very, very much a unicorn sort of action. Is the pressure of pushing down into ground is now forcing his left leg up off the ground. He's pushing back, forces that up off the ground, just that pressure that he's created in downswing. So you'll see this sort of left foot skip off the ground, really common in long hitters, long drivers. Now what you'll see with this real de-lofting, Jon plays his clubs very weak. His drivers at, I think, about 11.5, 12 degrees. Dustin Johnson, similar position at the top of his swing, very bowed. You'll see him playing around a 12-degree driver. Really common for those guys just because they de-loft it so much. You'll see that left foot really coming off the ground. Lovely extension through the ball. You won't see as much of getting up on that right toe as maybe some other players just because of that limited amount of ankle mobility. You'll see a lot of guys that are already up on that toe. You'll see the heel of the shoe. You'll see the spikes when they get in the position. I'll just move it a little bit more forward. You won't see that from Jon. Look how planted that foot is. Really, really planted. You'll see almost a similar action from Tiger now, actually, because of that fusion in his trail ankle. And it's similar with Jon. You just don't see, you'll see guys like Justin Thomas, they're really up onto that toe. Adam Scott, really up onto that toe. You can see a lot of the heel. You don't see that with Jon just because of his limited dorsiflexion in that ankle. Really high hands, loads of width. And I just love this action. It's unique. He's not tried to change it, and it works for him. You know, I just love this action. He's a big fella, probably 6'3", weighs a good chunk, and can just absolutely bomb the ball with those little fades. Very unique action, not an action that you'd teach. Potentially you'd look at somebody, if they do have that bowed wrist, that you'd take sort of certain aspects of Jon's swing and try and sort of work that in, but that transition there of down, creating that torque on the shaft, that's such a unique move that is so difficult to teach, but great move for power, great move for speed, Could Jon get a little bit faster if we wanted with the recent ball changes coming into effect in 2028? We might see Jon try and get a little bit longer, because if he got his hands up, say for instance here, you'd probably see an increase of around 5 mile an hour clubhead speed. Would that affect his his posture around that trail ankle? Possibly. So I think that's probably unlikely, but if he wanted to chase the speed, you could potentially try and get more rotation through that thorax, more rotation through the hips, maybe lift that lead heel a little bit. Whether he does that, I doubt very much. He's got a big deal with LIV now. I think he'll just stick with that action, solid action, great move. It's something we see in a lot of the history of the game. Guys with that bowed wrist, Lee Trevino comes to mind. Usually great strikers, a little fade, nice and controlled. Great action, and I'm sure he's going to win many more majors.